everyone. So glad to be here with you today. Welcome, welcome. If you are just joining, I'm Lauren Lefkowitz, Executive Leadership Coach. I have Alex Suchman with me today. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was like a, yeah.
I mean, it's way closer to what I say than what most people do. So I give you like a full 92%.
Okay. All right. I'm still in the A range. I got it. Amazing.
From one perfectionist to another.
Yes. I would like to get it right, though. Can you say it for us?
I say Suchman. I usually say Suk rhymes with book.
But... Oh, that is so helpful. Thank you. So Alex Suchman, thank you so much for being here with me today. If you are just joining us, the chat is open. I love to have a conversation with the person I'm with here in the room, in the virtual room, and also with you in the crowd. So if you are joining us and you want to say hi, just come say hi. I'm streaming through Restream right now, and if you haven't given permission to Restream to use your name, you'll come up as LinkedIn user. So I'll still call you out. But if you come up as LinkedIn user, tell us who you are so that we know who's with us. So let's do some introductions. Alex, I know we're here today to talk about autopilot and getting out of autopilot. But before we dive in, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh gosh, who am I? I am a problem solver. I have always been a problem solver, even as a kid. I grew up in Rochester, New York, but I've lived in Washington, D.C. it'll be 20 years this summer, which is very crazy. That you've been an adult for 20 years. And I moved to D.C. because I wanted to change the world, like many people do. I was very interested in health and public policy and making a more sort of just and equitable society through healthcare. And it was like, I'm going to be the person who changes the world. But what I noticed over years and decades was that a lot of things holding back a lot of workplaces is the interpersonal stuff. I know you see this a lot with your coaching too, but you get to be an adult, but then you realize we all still act like middle schoolers in the workplace. And that combined with we're all so busy and there's all of these external pressures to get certain things done in a certain way, that there's not enough, things are disorganized and there's misunderstandings all the time. And you don't have the time to have conversations that need to be had. So everybody jumps to assumptions, and that's pretty demoralizing. And so who I am now and my story is trying to fix that, trying to bring some humanity and connection back into the workplace.
Yeah. And if you carry that like middle schooler mentality forward, you get so hyper-focused on pleasing people, because if we're in middle school and the table has one open seat, you want the seat, right? And you don't want to walk up to the table and have people say like, oh, tell her the seat's filled. Tell her somebody's already sitting there, right? You want to walk up and have people say like, oh, Alex, it's you. Come sit with us, right? And so at least in my case, and I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, we spend so much time trying to serve the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so much energy trying to serve them well and like be good, right? And it's the childhood stuff that carries into adulthood. We want to be in the in circle, whatever we consider the in circle to be. And so when our energy is focused so hard on pleasing and serving and doing, the rest of our life kind of falls into the background, right? It's like background noise. So I'd love to hear your story on like what happened to you. Like, how did you get, before we talk about getting out of it, how did you get into autopilot yourself?
Oh, that's such a good question. I was, went to high school, did well in high school, went to college. It was sort of assumed I was going to go to college and then get a job. And then you start a job and you have your entry job, and then you get another job and another job. And there's just like this, you kind of think it's just this linear path that's laid out for you, and you're just following along. And you go to you get sick of one job, and whether it's you don't like the work anymore, or you don't like the people, or you want a new challenge, or you need more money, whatever it is, reasons you go. But they're all, a lot of them are like these external forces that are guiding you. And I was 15 years into my career and kind of looked around. I was like, okay, I have this title. I have people respect me and know what they think I know what I'm talking about. And, I'm making fine money, but I was miserable. I was so focused on like, what was I supposed to be doing to move along this path that I sort of didn't pay attention to all these warning signs that I didn't like the path that I was on anymore. And it took up too much energy and, emotional time, that the rest of my life just sort of shrank. And it was like, I have this job that's all consuming and I'm not happy. And this isn't what I thought my grown-up life was going to be like.
Yeah.
And, looking back, there are so many warning signs. It's like, how did I not see that? But you just kind of rationalize it because it's easier to just keep going.
It's easier to just keep going. It's familiar and you don't know what else to do.
Right.
Right. Because you kind of said like, oh, this is what being a grown-up is like. Right. Like adults work. We work for a bunch of years. We work for a bunch of years more. We try to get more money. We try to get higher titles. And then like when we retire, we'll be happy. And I live
so
that
sad.
way.
It sounds
so
sad.
I know, when you like break it down into simple steps.
You have fun as a kid. You're miserable as an adult. Hopefully you have some good years at the end of your life when you're not working.
Right. And hopefully you have enough money to live for the rest of however long your life is. Yeah, really depressing. And so, you and I do similar work. I work a little bit more with individuals and you work more with teams. But we're both on this same sort of mission to snap people out of autopilot and to try to figure out with people, how can your work life and therefore your home life be better? And we get into these modes. I was in HR for 20 years and we get into these like hyperactive modes where we're like, we've got to bring in some training. We've got to do some stuff, right? And you put out some training and it doesn't really have a strategy behind it. And then people are like, oh, I got to go to training, and there's this like, if it's not training, then it's forced fun, right? It's like, we're going to do a trivia night at a bar, everybody be there. And people are like, I have family to get home to. I've got other plans. I have a second job. Like, why are you making me go out with everybody and force me to have fun? And so it's almost like the path of least resistance feels like just keep going to work and just keep getting through.
Yeah.
Right. And I did it too, right? Like I hit this point in my career where I felt compelled to keep contributing. And I made up in my head that I wasn't doing enough. That if I had my job under control and I could do my job in however many hours I felt was reasonable at the time, that clearly I had more bandwidth to do more. And so I fell into the workaholic trap and just made work my life. And I posted yesterday about how Autopilot impacted me, which was that I was covering the marketing department during the pre-conference for a every other year conference that we had. Tons of marketing, tons of paperwork to do, down a VP, a director, and another director on leave. And I came home one day, I opened my mail, and there was something from the Department of Transportation, and it was a ticket for passing a stopped school bus, which, like, honestly, I didn't even say it out loud until yesterday. And this was 5 years ago, because I was so embarrassed about it. And it, like, what a lucky thing that there were no kids crossing the street. But I looked at it and I opened it and I saw what it was for. And I was like, this is definitely a mistake. There's no way this is me. Well, the school bus has cameras on it. So there's a picture of me across the intersection with my face, my license plate number. Then there's a picture of me next to the bus where the stop sign is. And then there's a picture of me just past the bus.
Wow.
And the stop sign's there and it's out and it's clear. It is clear that this bus is stopped for children. And I didn't notice it. It wasn't like that feeling when you decide whether you're going to stop or not for a red light and you go and you're like, oh, I hope I didn't get a ticket. It was, I absolutely didn't know what happened. And I looked at the date and I remembered I had left early for work that day and it scared me. And I didn't learn a lesson. I mean, I didn't get another ticket. I was, I've always been a really careful driver. And so like my brain had now been trained to pay attention for that. Look out for school buses and red lights, right? But I still had, my days were like, I don't remember how I got here. I don't remember what I ate for breakfast. I come in, I do the work, I go home, I sleep. I come in, I do the work, I go home, I sleep. And it took me a long time to even realize that's how it was. And then to realize like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think,
go ahead. Sorry.
I'd say, and that's sort of the physical autopilot of sort of not noticing real sensory stuff around you.
Yeah.
But then there's all this stuff inside of us too, of just autopilot of like, this is the structure of my day. These are the things that I do. This is my job. Don't question it. Just keep going. And when you're on autopilot, not only are you're not seeing things that are happening around you, but you're not seeing opportunities. You're not being curious about what are other decisions that I could make? What are things I could notice? Like maybe it was a beautiful day. Like there could have been like an amazing rainbow right in front of you when you were driving on the day that you didn't even see because we're just in autopilot. And one of the things, that drove me to leave in my job is sort of at the macro level, I was on autopilot. Like this is the career trajectory that I'm supposed to be doing. But on the day-to-day, I was working in operations. And I would hear the things that people were complaining about, and I'd be like, "We can fix this." And I would put all my effort into trying to, fix things internally, put new processes in place, help people coordinate better, make sure that everybody was set up for success in their jobs in terms of the tools they had and how they could access all the information. But it was like beating my head against a brick wall because it was just easier to not do anything and complain about it. To me, it's like if you could remove a negative stimulus in your life, why wouldn't you want to? It's a weird type of autopilot because it's damaging to the people going through it, but it's sort of easier to feel like you're just sort of helpless. You can't do anything about it. Things are just happening to you.
Yeah. Default is always easier than effort.
Yes.
And so familiar, like that it feels like it's comfortable and it's not comfortable. But because it's familiar and because it's what we know, we're like, I'm just going to complain about it. It still doesn't work for me. It's going to be hard to learn. I don't really want to change that I do it. I'm just going to complain. And we keep doing things in inefficient, ineffective, and like energy draining kind of ways. Yeah.
So draining.
Yeah. So for me, when I hit my wall, I was, at the time I hit the wall, I was interim managing the finance team. I was managing a construction project for our new building that we never moved into because of the pandemic. And then the pandemic started. And I was like, I can't deal with another thing. There's no more room for things. And I realized something had to be different. So I got triggered out of autopilot because it got worse. Right. It wasn't like I saw this light and I was like, it could be so much better. I'm going to look over there and follow my dreams. It was like I had to hit whatever was going to be my bottom and realize like, I don't even have room for this bottom in my life.
Yeah.
And do something different and reach out for help. And that was not my strong suit. It still is a struggle area for me to reach out for help. Because I'm the helper. I'm the person who supports other people. I help other people with their stuff.
Right.
I don't have problems. I help other people with their problems. And so I wonder what was that was sort of my my nudge, like kick in the pants, right? The red
Mm-hmm.
light thing, or the stop sign thing wasn't a sign for me. Breaking my arms wasn't a sign for me.
Mm-hmm.
Taking on more and more wasn't a sign. It was like this new thing happened that was a worldwide problem, and everybody in my company turned to me, and I couldn't do one more thing.
Yeah.
What was your sign that something had to change?
Yeah. So I was working in the government contracting space. And so you submit all these proposals to the federal government for different research projects. And the federal fiscal year ends at the end of September. So summers were always like, I could not take great vacations in the summer because it was so many proposals. You're trying to get your funding for the next year. And I won't bore you with the details of the federal proposal process, but it's tedious. It's really tedious. And, you know, even when I left, it was 2016, and they were still requiring some proposals had to be submitted like 8 hard copy binders of, so, and they have to be on a certain date. I tend to get things done early so you don't have to stress at the last minute. But I was the only person who had that mentality. And the number of nights and weekends that I was in the office very, very late, waiting for other people to do their stuff so that I could finish everything up and get it out and make sure it was done on time.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of like ultimate responsibility was on me when I had done all my stuff early and other people just had to do little things. And my husband actually pointed out to me, and he said, this happens to you every summer. You are so miserable. You say you don't want to do this anymore, and then it just keeps going, and you make excuses for why things are going to get better, and then they just don't. And finally, I sort of had it. I was like, I can't, I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, there's better ways to do this. I'm putting everything in place for it to be easier for other people, to be more proactive. And they're still not doing it. And finally, it was like, this can't be my problem. Like, I can't be taking on the stress of all these other people's problems. It really just wore me down. And when you said, it's easier to default to doing nothing, I sort of realized I couldn't even start to think about what I wanted to do next while I was still at this job, because it was so demanding and I was so in that position of helping everyone that it was just like taken for granted that I would be, 157% all the time.
Right.
And I just left. I didn't have anything lined up. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I just knew that I couldn't even start to think about those types of questions until I could close the door on that part of my life.
Yeah.
That was probably the hardest thing I've ever gone through.
Yeah. And that's such a great point, because your head is so filled with what you're trying to get through and trying to get done. And especially when you're in any kind of leadership position, and you don't have to be a VP or a CEO, like anytime you're in charge of the project or the task or the responsibility, and other people either below or above or laterally have cross-functional responsibility to you, and you can't get your job done without them. And you're just always thinking about serving and not messing up. I was always afraid that I was missing something big, that I was missing some sort of compliance deadline, that I would forget to put in somebody's raise, like whatever it was, all things that I was doing. But fear has to go somewhere, and if you're bottling it all up, it comes out somewhere. And I couldn't even think about what could be different. Like, I didn't have the headspace for it. So you leaving your job, in my case, I hired a coach, really sort of as by accident, because I called somebody who I knew who was a coach, and I was like, tell me about coaching. I'm thinking about adding a certification to my docket, right? Like, in addition to 80 hours a week, I'd like to go get a certification so I can serve a company better. And she helped me untangle and start saying no and setting boundaries and get me down to a 40-hour work week. And then suddenly I had space in my head, right? You left your job. Suddenly you have space to think about something and consider, like, what do you even want?
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it, right? Quit your job is one way to do it. Get a coach.
Make a very drastic sudden change.
Yeah. For some people, it's like, get another job that's any other job, so that this job is mine, and then you can figure out what you want. So there are a lot of different ways to get out of autopilot. And I know I work with individuals on that, and you work with teams. So if you've got a team that's in a company that cares about its employees, and I've been there too, where like I loved the team, I loved the company, I loved the mission, I loved who we were serving, but it was chaotic all the time, or we were on autopilot, or we couldn't come up with new ideas, or we couldn't gain agreement. And so then what comes up is, hey, let's do team building, and everybody goes, I don't want to, right? Because then we have mock conversations, and we have, you know, and everybody's like, all right, I'll listen to the person you bring them in. I'll spend my half a day doing that. I'll, you know, check my phone. And you do it a little bit differently, actually a lot differently. The first time you and I talked, I was like, tell me more. I want more. So tell me what you do with teams who are on autopilot to help them like re-energize and emerge from that and be their creative, resourceful, amazing team building selves.
Yeah. We play games. You know, any game, whether it's, you know, doing a jigsaw puzzle or, you know, basketball or, you know, card games, any type of game, you know, charades, it's some type of problem solving within a set of parameters. Maybe there's a timer, maybe you're just using certain equipment or pieces, maybe it's within a space. And it's, you're getting through it. If it's a game where multiple people are playing, you know, even if it's two people, you're going through that experience together. And in bringing mindfulness into how are you playing the game? How does this game make you feel? So let's say you and I are playing together, but we're just paying attention to, oh, wow, Lauren's really good at this game and I'm not so good at it. Like, what is it about the way she thinks that's making her good at it? And maybe it's a strategy game and you're really good at strategy. And maybe I'm more good at, you know, I'm better at, you know, physical coordination. I'm not. That's very hypothetical. But just understanding, oh, wow, like, you know, we're playing the exact same thing. We're doing the same thing in the same time, in the same space, and you're experiencing it really different. And here's how, understand why. It opens up new possibilities. We sort of take for granted the big default we have is just assuming that everybody is going through the world thinking and feeling just like we do. And that's 100% wrong. And so just talking about that and digging into it a little bit opens up new possibilities and recognizing certain patterns that happen and the impact that they have. And then you can think about, well, how can we use this information to do better going forward? So an example that I've seen a lot is we can play these games with teams virtually, and you know, you're on Zoom and people are interacting and doing these things, and someone might not realize their camera's off or they're sort of looking off in the distance. And to other people, it looks like they're not paying attention. They're not engaged, whether they are or not. And they're going to make assumptions about you. And so if my default is just like, if I'm on Zoom and I'm just sort of sitting like this, maybe this is just the most comfortable position for me to sit in. And, you know, I like looking at something that's in the corner. But once I'm made aware that it makes you feel like I'm not listening to you, or that I'm not interested, or that I'm judging in some way, and I'm made aware that my default is having a negative impact on somebody else, I can choose to do something differently. And that's a really important moment to recognize, oh, wow, everything that I do to show up in a situation is going to be interpreted by the people there with me. And you can make decisions, you can snap out of that autopilot and be deliberate with some of the things you say, some of the things you do that are going to have a better outcome, not only for you and the other people as individuals, but for the whole group together. That's a pretty empowering realization.
Yeah. Yeah. Brene Brown talks all the time about how we make up a story, right? Yeah. And it's funny, I was on a call yesterday, a Zoom call, or a couple of days ago with two people, and one person was looking at us and then said like, okay, let me look it up, and like looked away, and it looked like she was looking out the window. And she very quickly said, my big monitor's over here. That's why I'm looking over here. But in my head, it was like, hey, what's going on outside? You know, because there was also,
are we not cool anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you okay? Do you need a break? But it was like that. And it's somebody I fully trust. So I didn't think that she was at all disengaged. But even in that moment, I felt my brain decide something that she was doing that wasn't at all the truth. And what I've played some of your games, and with people I don't know, actually. And even then, I could really learn the team dynamics. In one of the games we were playing, I noticed one other woman and I were very helper oriented. And so we were taking notes on the screen for the group without discussing that one of us was going to do it. So we were both putting the same notes up at the same time. And I backed off, and, and she did a wonderful job. But in a team, if we worked together, there's a potential that we both over offer to help. There's potential that we butt heads because we both want to be the helper. And so
it's possible that one avenue for helping goes unhelped because you're both focusing on the same thing, and there's not that coordination. There's not nearly enough time given to think about sort of process and coordinate. Everybody sort of dives in doing their default, whatever it is they do. And that might not be the most strategic or the most effective, the most satisfying. It might not lead to the best outcomes. It's that dangerous autopilot again.
Yeah. So I look at what I've learned so far about what your company is doing. Like if I were building this slogan, I would say games, but not dumb. Like there's this sense when you're doing like trivia, some people love trivia, some people hate it. If you're doing an online scavenger hunt, some people love that, some people hate it. With this, it's like, it's brainy enough. It makes you think. It makes you ask each other questions, or have discussion from questions that the trainer or facilitator brings up. And it leads, I think, to really deep conversations. So what have you seen come out of that kind of work with teams?
Yeah. Well, I guess first answer, I want to go back to something you said earlier about the forced fun, like why are we doing this thing? And I think in order to make the team building a successful experience, you have to be transparent from the beginning of what the purpose is. You have to say, this is really just a time to have fun. But if you want people to have fun, you have to recognize not everybody likes bowling. Not everybody likes happy hours. Not everybody likes, trivia. And so for the people who don't like it, are they forced to participate? In which case it's forced unfun, it could be forced misery. And so like just in those decisions of like how you structure something and how you frame it, you are making it more or less likely that some people will be engaged. So what we see the key is saying, we're going to do these games, but the purpose of them is to help you get to know each other better, or to get a better sense of like what your shared values are, or talk about how different people process information and respond to instructions, or, hear instructions. You put some type of purpose to the play, and it's a purpose that the team has already recognized that they need, that they would acknowledge as something that they want to do. And so then right from the beginning, they know what to expect. You've told them sort of why they're doing this. It's not just a wasted 2 hours of time or however much time. And then it also primes them to be thinking about that, about whatever it is you want them to be thinking about. If you want it to be, how do you show, what nonverbal communication are you using when you're doing something, and, what's that conveying to other people? Do you want it to be, how do you step in? How do you take some sort of leadership role? What's your approach to leadership? They're being more aware of that, so they'll be more reflective. And then at the end of the experience, you can then look back and say, what did you see now that you're primed to be thinking about whatever type of team building aspect we were getting to? Because like the idea of building, like you have to be building something, and there has to be a foundation for it. And so if it's team building, but there's no context given, you're not really building. You're just sort of like team throwing spaghetti at the wall or something.
Right. Yes. Some of it will stick and most of it will not.
Yeah. Like team, like chaotic idling or something.
Right. Team waste of time. Yes, exactly. So Tell us who you work with, who should be contacting you, and how they might get started.
Yeah. We work with all different types of teams, from a team that's working together on a project to leadership across an organization to people who are in coaching programs. These games are for people who want to do better, who want to be more attuned to themselves and the people around them, and want to feel like they can make better decisions in the soft skill areas. So we do really fun sort of lunch and learn type workshops of, get to know the people around you. What are different communication styles? We've done longer multi-session, here's how to build a culture of psychological safety, or here's how to come up with a shared approach to philosophy to leadership within a group. So we facilitate all different types of sessions for teams. We also have on our website a catalog of games that are free to access that can be used to start really interesting conversations that can be self-facilitated. We really just want to get more games in the workplace, get more play in there. Play is the opposite of autopilot. It's intentional. You're sort of internally motivated to do something different, to think in different ways. And it's a good way to just snap out of the status quo.
Yeah. It's a great way to have fun together without feeling like it's pointless.
Yeah.
And sort of really combining, work with enjoyable exploration. Okay, if I put your link in the chat?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, great. So it looks like it didn't post to LinkedIn. It looks like it posted to Facebook and YouTube. So after we're done, I'll post it. Make sure it goes into LinkedIn as well. Any final thoughts as we're starting to wrap up, as we're thinking about people who are watching either live or on the replay, who heard us talking about autopilot and thought like, oh, that's me. That's where I'm stuck. That's where I live. What would you tell people to do? Like, what's a good first step?
Start being curious, asking why are things done the way they are? And that can be everything to like, why is this the structure of our meetings? If people don't like it, is there room to change it? And maybe you have to have some conversations with people to figure it out. But I think a lot of things everybody just sort of accepts as a given because nobody's questioned them. And so if there's something that's not working for you, or you have an idea to make something better, just sort of investigating a little bit and talking to other people, and they might also have the same thought, then that builds some momentum. So just being curious. And it's great to do it proactively to just make things better for the sake of getting better. But a good place to start is looking at things that are causing stress or frustration or getting in the way, and trying to remove those obstacles.
Yeah. I imagine there's some amazing person out there who got into their career deeply and the whole time thought about what would be amazing and got curious the whole time and just kept making it better and better for themselves. But that's not most of us.
I can't even, I mean, at least once a day, something comes up and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's still work, right? Even if we love it, it's still work.
Right. Yeah. That's such a good point.
But, for a lot of us, either individually or as teams, we have to hit a point where we say, this isn't working. I cannot live the rest of my life like this. And I often ask people like, what if the team is still like this in 5 years? What do you think it'll be like? What if you're still working 60, 80 hours a week in 5 years, in 10 years? What's that going to do to your friend life, your home life, your family, your health? Like, what do you see happening? And so, I talk about being fine. That's sort of my thing, that fine is a trap, because it's not really fine. It's just us self-soothing and saying like, I'm fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'll do it. It's fine.
It's really saying like, it's not as bad as I imagined it could be.
Or like, I don't even have the headspace to think about how it could possibly not be fine, because then I'll be devastated.
Right.
Yeah. So I created an inventory for people called the Fine as a Trap inventory. And it gives you an opportunity from a career perspective, from an individual perspective, and you can use it from a team perspective, to look at all the aspects of work. What are the job duties? How's the management? How are your hours? How do you like working with the people you work with? What's the environment like? And it really gives you like it's 5 or 10 minutes that it takes, but it really gives you an opportunity to look at a granular level at what isn't working. And if you find like, oh, this is the thing that isn't working, we have meetings all day and they're all really long and everybody's in every meeting. Well, that's a great opportunity to say, hey, team, let's create, I know it's another meeting, but let's create a meeting where we do some gameplay and some curious investigation, and we figure out, what don't we like about how we team? Are there too many people in the room? Are there too many meetings? Should more stuff be on paper? Are there not enough people in the room? Are we just inefficient when we're talking? But having a conversation about that without some sort of brainstorm opportunity that can spark real conversation in a different way, is just another meeting. So when you can bring in gameplay, and the games that I've played with you so far, every game I was like, oh, we could use this here. You could use this here. There's so many opportunities to use not exactly the problem, but a similar kind of scenario, and sort through what is everybody's role? What are people thinking? When something comes out that's a complaint, like, oh, that's why he's always like that in meetings, and so you can get out of your own head and get out of your own way a little bit and really explore what could be different without attacking each other, right? With this opportunity to have this gameplay as a buffer and an idea generator. So I can't say enough about what you do, clearly. I'm very excited about it. Any final thoughts, anything that you want people to know as we're signing off today?
Well, I guess it's common to say like, oh, I've got to my breaking point, but like the breaking point doesn't have to be literally when you break. Like a breaking point can be like, okay, I've seen enough red flags and I don't want to keep going down this red flag point. So, I definitely don't think you should have to hit rock bottom to feel like you can do anything. And then I'm more positive. I just encourage people to, next time you're playing a game with friends or family, think about what can you observe from how you think or feel during that play experience, for yourself, for other people. Why do you find that part of the game fun? Does that connect to the skills that you're using, the way you're thinking? Does that connect to other things in your life? Can you see any patterns? And that's just really valuable information.
Yeah, that's terrific. And yeah, I agree with you. I think we went through a long period of time where we all felt like we had to hit rock bottom before we could make any change. Like that was our wake-up call. And I feel like there's a grand awakening right now, that the people who have hit rock bottom are changing jobs, they're changing careers, they're growing, they're asking for more from their employers, more flexibility, more responsibility, more money, more recognition. And I think as that is starting to happen, I'm seeing people who haven't hit rock bottom say like, I don't want to be where those people are.
Yeah.
I want it to be better before it gets worse. And it's so great. And it's such a great opportunity. And companies are going to have to respond to that, because there are enough jobs and there's enough movement that there will eventually be, while there are companies of choice now, there will be companies of not choice, right? Like, don't go to these companies, and they will have to make changes. So it's such an incredible time in the career and job and company market. And I so appreciate you spending time with me today on a Friday afternoon. I know our chat's been quiet today, but we'll get a lot of replays, I'm sure. And I can't wait to play games with you again.
Likewise. Thank you so much. It's been really fun.
Thanks so much, Alex.